Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Roach Jeffrey. Subscribe and channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our video. College football has had a tons of hiring and firings, and now it is starting to happen in the NFL. The Carolina Panthers have fired their head coach, Frank Reich. And there has been a big uproar and outrage over the Carolina Panthers this entire season on the fact that they took Bryce Young over CJ Stroud. A lot of people weren't even high on the Frank Reich hiring in the first place. Everybody's upset at owner David Tepper, even though he is still currently the owner of the Panthers, and he has fired Frank Reich. And there's been other coaches that have been fired as well. I'm going to get into this big mess that's happening in Charlotte, North Carolina right now with the Carolina Panthers, who as of right now are probably the worst team in the NFL, and in a lot of people's mind, one of the most poorly run teams in the NFL as well. It's definitely a big conundrum, so let's get into it. Carolina, as I've already mentioned, has fired Frank Reich. The Panthers are 1-10 this season. They are an absolute disaster, and you talk about the fact that you had an option between CJ Stroud and Bryce Young to take as the number one pick in the 2023 draft after the Panthers made the trade with the Chicago Bears, giving them DJ Moore and the 8th pick in the draft and another pick as well to get the number one pick in the draft from the Chicago Bears. And they decided to take Bryce Young over CJ Stroud. I said before the draft that I felt CJ Stroud was a better option for the Carolina Panthers, a safer option because he is 6'3". And even though a lot of Ohio State and Alabama quarterbacks, to be fair, have struggled in the NFL because they play on such great teams in college football, and then when they go pro, it's a big reality check, and a lot of them do struggle in the pros. And then some people talked about that Bryce Young passed the aptitude test over CJ Stroud, so some people were saying that Bryce Young might be the better pick because he is such a high IQ player, but CJ Stroud was a really good passer as well at Ohio State. What he did in that Georgia game was incredible, and with that 6'3" frame, it was a safer option than picking Bryce Young at 5'10" and 180 pounds. One of the shortest quarterbacks in NFL history. Plus, Frank Reich has only worked with quarterbacks that have been over 6 foot as well, so he's used to quarterbacks of that type. Having Bryce Young be so small and trying to run an offense around him as a rookie quarterback in the NFL who has so many teams with great defenses, and Carolina's offensive line already wasn't the best, that was tough. And giving DJ Moore away, that was a big loss to the Panthers wide receiver room. The Panthers traded Christian McCaffrey away a year before that because he kept getting injured. That's been a big loss for the Panthers as well because he's lighting it up with the 49ers. DJ Moore's lighting it up with the Bears. The Panthers are a mess all around. And I know if you look at Frank Reich's record, I get it. He only was 40-33 and won at the Indianapolis Colts. That's why he got fired there. So some people were not high on the hiring, but going 1-10 in year one, that's not enough to fire a coach though. Most people do not get fired after 11 games. The Mississippi State Bulldogs in college football fired Zach Arnett after 11 games, and I get it because he was kind of a buffer coach. They gave him a really small contract, and I guess the Mississippi State Bulldogs were never really serious about having him as the long-term head coach, but they should have only given him the interim label and not given him a head coaching job. With the Carolina Panthers, they hired Frank Reich off of his firing of the Indianapolis Colts. They knew what they were getting with Frank Reich. He's been in the NFL for a very long time, and a lot of people have mixed thoughts on whether he's a great coach or not, but you cannot fire a guy after 1 year. This makes the Carolina Panthers look really bad. They've been struggling since the Ron Rivera era and Cam Newton. They have not made the playoffs since 2017, and then they got Matt Rule. He didn't make it as well, but they at least gave him 2.5 years, and Steve Wilkes did a solid job as the interim coach and defensive coordinator, being promoted to interim coach for the rest of the season. They didn't make the playoffs, but you get Frank Reich. You're hoping you can turn it around, and like I said, 1-10 is abysmal, but you can't lay all the blame on him. And then you look at the fact that the Panthers have fired quarterbacks coach Josh McCown, and they fired running backs coach Deuce Staley. So the Panthers are cleaning house. All of these guys are getting fired and on the way out, even though they have not all been at the Panthers for very long. They've only been there for 1 year, which is not enough time to turn around a team that just does not have a lot of weapons because they traded DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey away. And then you talk about the fact that Bryce Young is such an undersized quarterback and he's struggling behind that offensive line. And most Carolina Panthers fans are blaming David Tepper for all this, and they're not blaming Frank Reich, because you think about it, when Jerry Richardson was the owner of the Carolina Panthers, the Panthers went to 2 Super Bowls, one with Cam Newton in 2015 and one back in the early 2000s with Jake Delhomme at quarterback. Have the Panthers ever been an elite franchise in the NFL? No, they're one of the younger franchises in the NFL, and outside of those 2 Super Bowl appearances, they've actually had a below-average history in the NFL. The Panthers have never had 2 seasons back-to-back where they've been over 500, even even when they had Cam Newton. So they usually have a good year, then a bad year, then a good year, and a bad year. So the Panthers have never been a consistent organization, but they do have a pretty good fan base. They have good fan support, and both fans in North Carolina and South Carolina do support this team, so they have a pretty broad reach. But the Panthers have been abysmal since 2017. Obviously, when Cam Newton was going downhill and Jerry Richardson obviously was no longer the owner anymore, the Panthers were trending in the wrong direction. But you bring in David Tepper, a new owner, and you've had two coaches in Matt Rule and Frank Reich. It's not working out. They've had a plethora of quarterbacks since Cam Newton: Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield. You've also had Kyle Allen, PJ Walker. All these guys have not worked out, and now Bryce Young's not working out either. And a lot of people, again, are blaming David Tepper for this, because since Jerry Richardson hasn't been the owner and since Cam Newton hasn't been the quarterback, Ron Rivera's the head coach, the Panthers have been absolutely abysmal, and fans are ripping into the firing of Frank Reich and with all the other firings as well. If you look at some of the comments on Twitter, Panthers firing their coach after 1 year when the coaching staff wanted CJ Stroud, but the owner forced Bryce Young on them as well. And that is something a lot of people have talked about. A lot of people believe that Frank Reich did want CJ Stroud, and I believe he did too, because of the fact that he's worked with quarterbacks of that size. And if David Tepper and the other guys in the up and up in the Carolina Panthers wanted to have Bryce Young for CJ Stroud, why hire Frank Reich in the first place if Frank Reich wanted CJ Stroud? Now, obviously, some of this stuff is rumors, but still, it has been reported that Bryce Young was not the top option for Frank Reich, and it was CJ Stroud. And now Bryce Young and Frank Reich were trying to make it work, but now you got rid of Frank Reich, and Bryce Young's going to have to start over with a new head coach. It's a big mess with the Panthers. They don't even have a lot of great players on the roster right now on offense. Adam Thielen's 33 years old, and he's their best receiving threat. Miles Sanders has not been a fantastic addition from the Philadelphia Eagles. Granted, the offensive line has not been that great, but Miles Sanders has done a lot worse this year than he did when he was at the Philadelphia Eagles next to Jalen Hurts and their offensive line. The Panthers could be losing Brian Burns and Jeremy Chin as well, because they are going to be unrestricted free agents after the season. So that's going to hurt the Carolina Panthers on the defensive side of the ball if they cannot retain them. And they don't have any picks for this draft to get a Caleb Williams, Michael Penix, Bo Nix, Drake May, all these quarterbacks that the Panthers could get. They could have got Stroud last year, but they went with Bryce Young. And do I think Bryce Young has no chance to succeed in the NFL? I do believe he still has a chance. I'm not saying that Bryce Young necessarily was the worst pick in the world. He still could get better, but the Panthers have not helped out Bryce Young in any way, shape, or form. He does not have a lot of talent around him, and other people have that sentiment as well. Someone said he's not even finished his rookie season, and Bryce Young has already experienced the organizational instability that turns promising players into busts. Another one said gave this man Bryce Young, Miles Sanders, and Adam Thielen to be successful. So again, just not a lot of talent around Bryce Young to succeed. A big sports reporter said the Panthers are 1-10, have the worst record in the NFL. They would have the number 1 overall pick, but their first rounder sitting in Chicago from the Bryce Young trade, an all-around mess. Even if the Panthers had got CJ Stroud, I don't even think they'd be doing as good as the Houston Texans are doing with CJ Stroud, because there's not enough talent all around on the team. And the fact that the Panthers gave away so much to get that first overall pick, they could have just tanked this year and got the first pick in this draft and maybe got a Caleb Williams or another high-profile quarterback like Drake May, whoever it may be. I'm not saying that, again, the trade itself to get the first overall pick was bad, or that Bryce Young's a bust and he's not going to work out. But all in all, David Tepper has made some big mistakes as the Carolina Panthers owners. Everybody's mad on Twitter about this. Carolina fans, even people that are not Carolina fans, realize that the Panthers are in big trouble. They don't have a lot of great players left on the team, and the ones that are there, they probably don't even want to be on the roster anymore. And who can blame them? Because if you're not winning games, what's the point of playing football? Yes, you're getting paid, but you want to win games, especially when you're a really talented player and be a part of a great organization. The Panthers have made a lot of missteps along the way since the end of the Cam Newton era. They have not found a generational quarterback to replace him with. They were hoping Bryce Young could be that guy. I guess David Tepper did, but it's not working out so far. But if David Tepper wants to stay the Carolina Panthers owner and he wants the Carolina Panthers to turn around, the next head coach that he gets, you cannot fire him after 11 games, and you have to give Bryce Young more weapons to be able to throw the ball to, and a better running back to have next to him, and better offensive linemen, and better defensive players. You got to get guys to want to play for this organization, and losing games like this left and right is not a good look at all. And players are probably going to want out of the organization. It's a bad look all around, and it's not a good look either that you just fired Frank Reich after one season, and they're firing Josh McCown and Deuce Staley. You cannot cover up your losses by putting all the blame on a head coach that did not have a lot to work with, and you gave Frank Reich a quarterback that he probably didn't want. He probably wanted CJ Stroud, but the Panthers have to stick with Bryce Young. They have to hope he's going to turn it around, because if not, then the trade's going to probably be one of the worst trades in NFL history. I hope Bryce Young can turn it around. I think he has the talent to do it, but the Panthers need to get a new head coach, stick with that guy, give him the talent that he needs, and give Bryce Young the talent that he needs to win, or the Panthers are going to be in hot water for seasons to come. They're really going to be struggling. And once you dig yourself into a big hole in the NFL, it is hard to dig out of, especially the big holes that the Panthers are digging themselves in, not even having a lot of draft picks to be able to get guys that can possibly help turn this team around. And David Tepper has a lot of fans mad at him right now, and it makes a whole lot of sense why. And if he doesn't turn around, most Panther fans are going to be clamoring for him to be ousted as well. But we'll have to see what happens with the Carolina Panthers. I think that Frank Reich deserves more time, and Bryce Young needs more weapons around him. CJ Stroud was a great option. Some of those other quarterbacks in this year's draft would have been great as well if they had kept their pick. But the Carolina Panthers are definitely the team that's in the worst shape in the NFL right now, and there doesn't seem to be any light at the end of the tunnel right now, at least in the near future. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below what you think about Frank Reich being fired as the Carolina Panthers head coach, and whether you place the blame all on him, Bryce Young, or David Tepper, or just the fact they don't have enough talent all around Bryce Young to succeed. And what you think about the fact that the Carolina Panthers are going to have to try to lure another coach to come into this organization, especially off the heels of firing a guy after only 11 games, and whether you think the Carolina Panthers can turn this thing around and be a good team in the near future, or if you think it's going to take many years for the Panthers to become good again. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I'll see you next time.